Hi, I'm Wayne Tuttle, and this is Chasing Legends. Hi, I'm Wayne Tuttle. Welcome back. This is Chasing Legends. Before we get any further, please hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave a comment if you want to leave a comment. Go to our About section. You'll find the link for our t-shirts, black and gray, long sleeve, short sleeve, Legends, Superstition Mountains, and the Dutch Hunter Rendezvous. With all that out of the way, it's a subject matter we've kind of covered before. The summertime. We're here nearing the end of June. We're getting ready to go into July, and the heat is upon us. Today we were out doing some filming for some other projects, and it was 111 degrees. I've covered a little of this before, but I wanted to cover a couple other particulars because it's a nice thing to refresh everybody who kind of jumps in here and watches this, because we get a lot of people that come out and you wouldn't believe it, but they say, oh, I'm going to come out and I'm making the trip to Arizona. The kids are out of school. They bring their kids and they decide to go into the mountains on a nice hike, which it's the wrong time of the year, definitely. The morning soon here will be in the 90, 95 degree range, and it'll be up over 100 and approaching the 110 range by 1 o'clock. This week I think we have, our highs are going to be around 117 degrees. It's not the time of the year to be in the mountains. I've always made, for many, many years, and not anymore, I made the July trips into the mountains. It wasn't about being the badass of the mountains. It was about nothing more than I just became a routine thing, is making one trip during the summer, picking a particular spot. It might be Hackberry, it might be going through down to Second Water, or a particular place. The last one I made, I think I spoke of, I went in through Fish Creek, was down at the bottom of Fish Creek Hill, went back towards the Salt River, figured I'd go in for a couple hours, get out before the temperatures got too extreme. There's a lot of wildlife out early in the morning, so I'd get out there at sunrise, go back in, figure I'd get out before the heat. And there'd been a little rainfall before that, so there was some potholes of water, and I got back in there. And when I got back to my truck, I could really feel it as I was coming out. But when I got back to my truck, I wasn't processing right. I had a headache. I ended up basically taking my shoes off, getting my feet and my head to cool off, and spending a good hour at the truck, pulling it over to the shade and trying to get my body temperature come down. I realized, wow, I don't have self-service, and I kind of pushed this kind of far, which is a lesson I learned, and I've always learned time and time again, is you don't know and don't process when you got yourself tipping that edge into heat exhaustion and so forth. And I tolerate the heat well, always have and all, but that particular day, who knows how much longer I would have had before I would have been in really big trouble. Taking that story, I want to go back probably 20 years earlier, and I was probably much more tolerant of the heat, probably spent more time in the heat, spent most of my life working in the heat daily, Monday through Fridays, Monday through Saturdays. This particular trip, I came in through Tortilla. I took down Tortilla, and that trip I wanted to go through down Lost Dutch Canyon into Fish Creek and travel south. A lot of those trips, like I said, there's not a particular goal or aim. It would just be an area I want to go into. I'd pick a morning and just say, I want to go down and try this. So I remember parking the truck down in Tortilla at the old foundations, and I took off for Lost Dutch and went down. I can remember going back in and going down entering Fish Creek and making the junction and all that. And the last thing I remember of that trip clearly in any way was I'd come back out of Fish Creek and I thought I'd made it into Lost Dutch. And I remember I was having a lot of problems trying to process where I was. And I kept thinking as it was getting hotter and I wasn't really finding much shade, anything. And I was trying to think of it just doesn't feel right, nothing seems right, and I was pausing a lot and thinking, did I take the wrong turn? Do I need to go back? And the one thing I know I was pushing myself is saying, no matter what I'm doing, if I just continue this general northwest direction, I'm going to end up out towards Tortilla somewhere. I can kind of see I'm moving through a canyon, so I'm going to have to end up through there somehow, because I know what direction I'm traveling. But somewhere in there, I just didn't process, or my memory just was done. And what I do remember is at a certain point I woke up and I was in my truck at the Tortilla parking lot. I'm at the trailhead before you go in Tortilla Road. And the truck was running, and I was sitting there, and I was parked. I parked the truck, and my pack's down on the passenger floorboard, and I looked over, and I had cool water and stuff. And it was a very confusing moment because it was almost like a dreamlike quality of like, have I just been sitting here the whole time and imagined I made this trip? And I realized, I could tell my body, and it was pretty hot and warm. But I remember just sitting there and looking around and just feeling completely baffled and confused. So somewhere on coming out of Lost Dutch Canyon, I completely just went on pure instinct, managed to get to my truck, drive out Tortilla Road, get to the parking lot, get some water, and realize I needed to rest. Usually that's one of the things is once you can cool yourself down and you can kind of rest and relax, if you got that headache and stuff, it's usually not the dehydration, it's the heat exhaustion and so forth that's getting to you. Heat stroke can be the most severe. So even if you pack enough water, even if you're wearing sunscreen, you're wearing something on you, you're perspiring, you're drinking water, everything's working, your body temperature will continue to kind of push up. And some of those days, obviously boulders, rocks, that type of thing in some of those canyons, you're just getting the heat pressure. And your body starts to have problems just eliminating the heat it's taking on. It just gets too strained. I've always been one for, during those type of temperatures, taking a lot of breaks, trying to cool my body down and start again as soon as I feel it heat up. The last time in July was, I'm about a mile from the parking lot, I'm just gonna push through it, which was a mistake because all it took was just that little bit extra to just kind of push me too far. The trip in Lost Dutch, I have no idea. I felt fine. I just didn't realize the confusion was probably brought on from heat exhaustion or something I wasn't feeling. I probably was just somewhere else in my head, and then I just kind of pushed it right past that barrier and didn't realize, which is the good point to make. Knowing and being able to be analytical and understand what I've put myself through and the experiences I have means necessarily in that my instinct got me out safely doesn't mean it'll work for you. My partner I've spoken of, Randy Wright, many a times, did a similar trip. He went in and was going to look at some mine that Howard Hornick, the Quarter Circle U caretaker, had worked something out. And I know Randy went in with Howard, and they went back, and Randy was walking, and Howard had his horse. And Randy came out of there on Howard's horse. And it sounds embarrassing, but again, similar thing happened to Randy as you get to a certain point, and then you're just done. And Howard told me, he was like, he wasn't making sense, all this stuff. I've seen it with a lot of people. When you see it in people, it's very obvious, but they also don't want to listen. They think they're fine. And that was probably the case with myself. So as a kind of a public service announcement, because we're entering that time of the year, I never want people to think I encourage that sort of thing. You want people to get out. You want people to kind of experience the outdoors. You want them to do it safely. Go to the botanical gardens here in Phoenix and walk and do things. Keep in some of the county parks and so forth. But do it as safely as possible. Always make sure you take plenty of water in your vehicle. Make sure your air conditioning works properly. Make sure you have cell phone. And your cell phone will reach someone, because if you get out of cell phone range, that can create a lot of problems. Probably one of the #1 deaths in the Superstition Mountains is due to the onset, whether it is heart attacks or whatever else, is probably because of the heat. It's not necessarily dehydration and lack of water, it's probably because of the heat. People get injured and injuries happen, but because of the heat and that type of thing puts them even in a much more dangerous situation. So please be safe out there. We only got a couple months to pull through this, and then the mornings will start to cool off and the weather will come around. Also remember early mornings and definitely around dusk, that's when the snakes like to come out. So when you're going through those grassy areas and the vegetation in the mountains, or even in the county parks or any place local here you think is particularly safe, that's when the snakes like to come out, and that's where you'll run into those the most. It's not during the daytime. They will come out in the evenings, and they'll be out there in the early mornings. So please be safe. I'm Wayne Tuttle. Thank you for joining us. Can't wait to see you again next week. This was Chasing Legends. Take care and see you then.